So Yolanda, I'll start with you. What makes a global city?
From our point of view, I think it's just the sheer amount of investment going into these cities. They are impossible for the real estate industry to ignore if you just look at the sort of capital flows that we're seeing, and not just from the usual suspects. I think over the last 5 or 6 years, we've seen the rise of, for example, private wealth, sovereign wealth, and new sources of investment piling into these global cities.
And Mikkel, what's a smart city?
We need to look at, to begin with, what makes a city attractive to begin with, and that is the opportunity to prosper, the opportunity for people to prosper, to have access to services and have convenient access to services. And as we continue to see the increased influx of people into cities, we have to find ways to manage city systems in a smarter way in order to make sure that the reason that people come to cities to begin with, they still have access to those things.
Has the definition of a world city changed? Has it evolved over the 3 or so decades that you've been looking at them?
There are really 3 types of world cities today. The established world cities, the Londons, the New Yorks, the Hong Kongs, the Parises, the Tokyos, who combine that kind of corporate center and financial center with all of that power and influence that we understand. There's the new world cities that Yolanda spoke of, who've chosen a different sector mix, a set of sectors that are newly globalizing: science, technology, medicine, higher education, digital, creative industries, clean tech. And those cities are able to be global leaders while still being small, comfortable, affected. And of course, Austin's role in medical science, in music, creative industries is where it leads. There's also a third group of world cities, which is what we might call the emerging world cities. You would put into this group Shanghai, Sao Paulo, Mexico City, Seoul perhaps, Istanbul, Moscow. The cities where they become mega cities, but they're on the journey to now being the gateway cities for the fast emerging economies. And those cities face a particular set of challenges around infrastructure, housing, land uses, etc. So I think in those ways, 3 kinds of world cities, and they're all learning from each other. And some cities, like Seoul, are sort of a bit of one and a bit of the other. Some cities, like Toronto, are a bit of one and a bit of the other. So you get some hybrids too.
Laurent, there's been a lot of talk this week about investors being interested in global cities, in gateway cities. Is that the case? Is that your almost unique focus?
No, it's not our unique focus, but it's very clear that when you are running global portfolios, unless if you have unlimited access to capital, you need to make some choices. And it's quite clear from a macro point of view that these biggest cities are driving, in fact, or capturing a higher part of the growth in a country. So clearly you have to focus on these global cities. Now, in the criteria we are considering, many of what have been mentioned are obviously important. What we keep in mind that real estate is a liquid asset class, and time between making a decision and really being invested and the time you want to invest is taking a lot of time.
Alistair, is it the same for you? And do you recognise the distinctions that Yolanda, Mikkel and Greg are drawing? And do you make investment decisions along those lines?
Well, I'm clearly the most uninformed of the panel here in terms of global cities or smart cities, world cities. I mean, our perspective at Patrizia is a little bit different. Our focus is to build a pan-European platform, and so for us, what drives us is speaking with our global investors who are coming to Europe, and clearly Europe is on the map for all sorts of reasons, which we can go into, and they normally start in London, then they go to Paris, and then the big question is, where do they go next?
Is London the leading world city right now?
Yes, although I'm sure anyone from New York in this room would probably disagree, but it's undoubtedly in that sort of duo premier position. And it's actually possibly one of London's most difficult things, that it is at the pinnacle, as it were, and all it can do is, as it were, fall down the mountain, and has to work very hard, I think, to maintain that position. I think London's physical fabric is one of its greatest assets. The fact that the streets of London have accommodated and will, I think, continue to accommodate a huge range of changing economies and human life that we can't begin to predict now.
Okay, ours to lose then. Right. Okay, on that note, we'll have to end it. Thank you for your time and thank you to our panelists.